Hey guys, it's Godbars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 300th episode of my series, where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it has, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. So here we finally are at the end of this group, with what's easily the single most overdue and obvious modern classic from the last decade, which insanely took me 300 uploads to get to, but I figured it would be a fitting way to close out this set of relatively recent personal favorites, because while it may be nearly a decade old at this point, I fondly and vividly remember listening to Kendrick Lamar's 2015 masterpiece To Pimp a Butterfly the day it came out, and to say this thing shifted the landscape of hip-hop would be an understatement. I already detailed why I held off on this review for so long, back at the start of the group when I covered Danny Brown's Atrocity exhibition, where I explained how despite agreeing that AE and T-Pab are the magnum opuses for those respective artists, I had opted to cover some earlier projects that I had more of a personal connection to, from both legends like 2011's Section 80 or 2012's Triple X, especially since an album like To Pimp a Butterfly has been dissected and reviewed to death. And then I moved on to other acts I hadn't covered yet and kind of put these obvious essentials at the back of my mind. But now that I'm finally ripping the band-aid off and getting into this densely constructed experience, I should start by saying that my position on this LP is very similar to the take I had in my previous upload, where I may not just blindly regard this thing as a 10 out of 10, absolutely flawless listen, but I still can't really say it's all that overrated, because for all intents and purposes, it's just about as close to perfection as you could get. Really, the only thing that in hindsight has kind of prevented me from just labeling this as some unparalleled piece of hip-hop is one of the lead singles, titled I. It isn't an awful song by any means, I just never felt like it was on par with the rest of the track list, and while I agree with the common consensus that the track was improved and given more dimension through the live version that appears on the final product, I never really thought it made sense how everyone seemed to leap from the general feeling that it was a somewhat lackluster, decent at best single when it came out, to apparently becoming another flawless moment that couldn't feasibly have been improved upon, pretty much solely because it descends into chaos at the end and manages to link itself back to the main ideas and themes presented. However, that's really the only moment that I could even remotely classify as a negative on this thing, and at the end of the day, there's a reason why it's so celebrated, and why I personally witnessed numerous people who weren't even big hip-hop fans, or outright disliked the genre, until being introduced to Kendrick's third studio full-length here, which is so immaculately orchestrated and put together that even the stingiest, most traditional jazz fan would really have no choice but to respect and admire what's going on here. And I think it's this wide outreach to various types of music fans all over the world that has helped transcend this album to such an elevated status, where even rap-hating parents like mine are aware of To Pimp a Butterfly's place in the pecking order. A big part of the appeal here for me personally has always been the way this album flows and progresses, with the genius incorporation of the now infamous I Heard You Was Conflicted poem, which reoccurs a handful of times throughout the LP, and whenever it's brought back, Kendrick adds a little more to the speech, until it eventually culminates in a full poem, which isn't delivered in its entirety until the second half of the closing track Mortal Man, where we get the astonishing reveal that K-Dot is actually delivering this piece of writing to none other than the late icon Tupac Shakur. Nowadays, with the abundant AI technology and whatnot, it may not seem quite as impressive or revolutionary, but I remember back when this album first came out, it just seemed so innovative and groundbreaking to chop up segments of an old Pac interview and reintroduce it in this new context where Kendrick's now the one interviewing him. And I recall my mind being blown with how organic and natural they managed to make this totally artificial conversation sound. Another shining quality I always found super admirable about T-Pab is how ridiculously consistent it is, with the first half of the LP just delivering banger after banger, yet no two tracks are alike. From the funky, neo-soul-filled intro that kicks the LP off and sounds as full and layered as possible, to the free-form, jazz-inspired, almost avant-garde for free interlude, where Kendrick pulls out some of the quickest, most technically impressive flows of his career, all while painting a vivid, comedic portrait of relationship issues that can be interpreted in a number of ways. From there, he goes into King Kunta, another energy-filled moment where this bubbling, G-funk-influenced instrumental sets Kung Fu Kenny up to deliver one of his most catchy and addictive hooks, which as usual, he doesn't dumb down his content for in the slightest. In this case, by making sure the hit single was riddled with historical and racial commentary, a key weapon in Kendrick's lyrical arsenal that he often uses to make comparisons and connections to his own experiences growing up in the rough streets of Compton. It was a very similar case with one of the other lead singles for To Pimp a Butterfly, that being the absolutely amazing track The Blacker the Berry, which I remember first hearing when I saw Dave Chappelle on his initial tour back after that long hiatus, where once the show ended, they played that song as everyone was shuffling out. And I remember thinking, whoa, Kendrick Lamar has a new single, and instantly downloading it when I got home. Because I would honestly maintain that there hasn't been one moment in his discography post-TPAB so far that hits even remotely as hard as Blacker the Berry, excluding the relatively recent diss tracks because obviously those have been such a massive cultural moment. And that isn't to say there haven't been plenty of bangers since Blacker the Berry, but I just adore everything about that track, from the sinister, uncompromising instrumental to Kendrick's extremely hungry delivery and flow, and of course his rage-filled, provocative lyrics. Another giant hit single for this album that went in the complete opposite direction was the relentlessly catchy song All Right, which despite entering my listening rotation at the exact same time as everything else on here, is probably the most nostalgic moment off the entire thing to me for some reason. Maybe that can be attributed to the very memorable top-tier music video, or perhaps it was just due to the song being insanely uplifting and positive, while not crossing over into corny territory at all. Which, harkening back to what I was saying at the beginning of this video, isn't something that the song I accomplishes quite as successfully in my opinion. But while virtually every track here could warrant its own personal breakdown, the one other song I feel pretty much obligated to discuss is the powerful and emotionally dark cut You, where Kendrick embarks on this draining self-confrontation, where he progressively gets more drunk and angry, until he's sharing his deepest, most personal and vulnerable secrets, along with feelings of self-hate, self-blame, and eventually self-destruction. I could get into the thought-provoking How Much a Dollar Costs, where we get a true masterclass in conceptual writing and storytelling, or the sensual and metaphorical These Walls, where Kendrick even manages to make a song all about sex, poetic, empowering, and lyrically potent. But it's about that time of the video where I need to get into the producers and guest artists who made contributions to this thing, and with a masterpiece this vast and diverse, you better believe we have no shortage of names in either department. Starting with the talented roster that handled the immaculate instrumentals here, we have an assortment of legends including Boy Wonder, Lippa, AOZ, Lawrence Dobson, Love Dragon, Pharrell Williams, Rocky, Soundwave, Tay Beast, Kaz Arnold, Terrace Martin, Thundercat, Tommy Black, Who Are I, Flying Lotus, Knowledge, and modern jazz powerhouse Kamasi Washington. Veteran bassist Thundercat also doubled as one of the features on To Pimp a Butterfly, and he was accompanied by artists like George Clinton, Bilal, Anna Wise, James Fauntleroy, Ronald Isley, Rhapsody, and Snoop Dogg. For my overall top 3 favorite songs on this one, it isn't exactly one of the easier choices I've had to make, but I ultimately decided to go with Wesley's Theory, You, and The Blacker the Berry. However, while I'm probably going to skip over a couple of the tracks I already discussed by name, I still have an extensive list of honorable mentions to shout out, including Hood Politics, King Kunta, Institutionalized, Mama, How Much a Dollar Cost, Complexion, A Zulu Love, You Ain't Gotta Lie, Mama Said, and Mortal Man. Thank you for watching my 300th video. Next time we are kicking off a new group of Golden Age classics, so tune in for that one. And if you enjoyed, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite moments are off of this career-changing release. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.